Now on All Indiana Politics, hoping to unseat the governor of Indiana. We go one-on-one with Democratic nominee Dr. Woody Myers on rebuilding Indiana's economy and the response to the coronavirus, replacing a Supreme Court icon, the debate over voting on a successor to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the presidential debate season begins. What's at stake for Donald Trump and Joe Biden Tuesday night?
Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
And good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Phil Sanchez, and welcome to the debut of All Indiana Politics here on Wish TV. We're proud to be your local news source and the home of Indiana's only statewide television news network. Now, each and every week, All Indiana Politics will bring the top leaders from all over Indiana to cut through the noise and get answers on the issues that matter to you. And we begin this morning with a race for the governor. Dr. Woody Myers is the Democrat looking to unseat Eric Holcomb. We are now just 37 days until the election, and early voting set to begin next week. It comes as Governor Eric Holcomb has decided to lift nearly all coronavirus restrictions around the state. Dr. Myers, thank you for being here with us. I want to start with the coronavirus and the state's response thus far under Governor Eric Holcomb. Your thoughts?
Not good. I know that we could have done a much better job. We should have done a much better job. We should have anticipated the problems that we have now seen happen. We've had over 100,000 folks that have been diagnosed, and the ratio is probably more like 10 to 1. For every person you get diagnosed, there's probably 10 people that have it. We've had 3,300 deaths. If we had started our testing program sooner, if we had put a mask mandate in and enforced it, if we had alerted our citizens to the deep importance of social distancing and all the other things that one can do to minimize the likely transmission, we'd have fewer people that have suffered from this problem. So I just know that a better job could have been done.
Going forward, if you do win this election, what would you do differently?
Well, right now we've got to optimize where the testing resources go. Over half the deaths have been in nursing homes, so you want to concentrate far more of your testing resources to help the people that work there to understand when they are at risk and minimize the likelihood of patients dying there. In our correctional system, that's an area that needs more attention as well, because those are confined populations. We've got to give our schools better guidance on when it is appropriate, when it is inappropriate to bring kids back, because kids, although they don't die as often from this disease, are perfectly good transmitters of the virus to teachers, to others in the school, bringing it home to mom and dad and to grandma and grandpa. That's a problem, and so I want to minimize that kind of transmission as well. And have to have a good talk with our universities as well. Our young folks are doing things as young folks do, right. And I think that the Notre Dame football team, for instance, might have wanted to enforce some policies a little differently so they could have played this weekend. So those are the kinds of things that I will champion, making sure that until we have a vaccine ready, that we're doing absolutely everything we can to minimize transmission in our state and to keep people alive. That's what government is supposed to do. All
of the experts are predicting things maybe getting worse and ramping up as the flu season comes our way and the winter goes on. If that is the case and medical experts are recommending another stay-at-home order, is that something you would be open to?
Yes, it would be. We need to look at the numbers. We need to listen to the data as it's discussed by the folks at the NIH. But I'm very worried. I'm very worried that we're too lax with respect to masks in Indiana, that we truly need a mask mandate. We need to make sure that Hoosiers understand the importance of wearing it, not just for their own protection, but to protect their neighbors and protect their loved ones. And I just know if we were to enforce that and do that right, fewer folks will get sick, fewer will die. And it also happens to help with the influenza problem that we know is coming this fall as well. Yeah. So we've got two major challenges from a public health standpoint.
Obviously, the pandemic has had a major impact on not only the economy, but also the state budget. What would you do to recoup some of those funds, some of that money?
Yeah, that's going to be a big challenge. We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January. We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall. So we'll have to reprioritize our tax dollars and what we spend. The budget is a very large budget, and so when I take over, if the voters give me that opportunity, we're going to go through each dollar that's being spent, and there we're going to find some things that we don't have to do today that we can stop, or we can push the pause button on or delay for future years when we're in better shape. And then our priorities today have to come forward. K through 12 education, our teachers. They are desperately in need of help to increase salaries and to manage the affairs of the schools. We've got to make sure that we optimize our public health infrastructure. Even my opponent has said that it's inadequate and it has to be changed. There are just a number of things that are so important today to get our arms around COVID-19, and then criminal justice reform has to be a priority as well, Phil. The acts that we have seen by some law enforcement officers nationwide now have caused a great deal of concern in the population. We've made a series of recommendations that include cameras for our law enforcement officers, different approaches to training, changing the policies towards dangerous practices like chokeholds that are being used even before sometimes people are even being arrested. Those are the kinds of things that I know can make a difference, and those are the kinds of things that my administration will do.
Speaking budget-wise, is there anything off the table for cuts? I know you had mentioned raises for teachers, but what about how are you going to do both?
Well, like I said, we're going to go through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, and we'll look through and find those things that are in the budget today that perhaps can wait. In addition to that, we're going to do our best to make things more efficient by reducing the number of duplicating boards and commissions, making that much tighter, therefore reducing expenditures in those areas. And then finally, if all of that fails and to get us the money that we need, we'll look at the revenue side as well, and whether or not we should find new ways to bring revenue in. That's always the last resort. You want to make your budget as efficient as you can first. You want to stop wasteful practices like, for instance, the Indiana virtual schools, where $70 million was just completely lost. Those are the kinds of things that you want to get your arms around first.
I'm almost out of time, so I just want to jump in here. Tax increases, is that a possibility?
There's one that I'm looking at. I think that Indiana's cigarette tax is far lower than it should be, and it has the double positive effect of the more a pack of cigarettes costs, the less likely it is for our teenagers to smoke them. And so that might be one that we would look at, but it would be a last resort.
Let's talk education now quickly. Superintendent Dr. Jennifer McCormick, a Republican, endorsed you last week. Do you foresee yourself campaigning with her? And possibly, if you win, that she has a position in your administration?
Well, I'm very pleased that she endorsed us. And yes, we do see ourselves working together in the last 40 days or so on the campaign. We've got some plans underway right now. We're not ready to announce them this moment, but yes, we will be working on the campaign together. And who knows? We haven't got to the point yet of talking about what she wants to do in the future or what others want to do. I'll be certainly open to her thinking or open to her recommendations. There's a lot of activity going on in education in our state, and she's got her arms around a great deal of it today, doing extremely well. If she'd had the help from our legislature and my opponent, then maybe our state would be in much better shape. She didn't get that help, and so now she's looking in a different direction, and I'm glad she is. I
have about a minute left. Come November, are Indiana's elections secure, in your opinion?
In terms of the ability to count the votes properly and making sure that folks get the opportunity to cast their vote, I think so. I hope so. I don't think we're anywhere near as problematic as some other states, but I do worry about the lack of potential poll workers in some parts of the state. We haven't been assured yet that that problem has been completely solved. So that's why I'm encouraging everyone to vote early. To ask for your absentee ballot. First, you got to make sure you're registered, get your absentee ballot, and mail it in. That's the, I think, safest way, and I do trust the Indiana Post Office to do the right thing.
Countdown is on. Dr. Myers, thank you for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. And next week, I'll sit down with Governor Eric Holcomb to talk about his race for re-election, fighting the coronavirus, and restarting Indiana's economy. That's next Sunday at 9:30, right here on Wish TV. All right, coming up, heading to court to avoid being forced to go to the polls. The federal court showdown this week over expanding Indiana's vote by mail. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Let's turn now to the legal fight over expanding mail-in absentee voting here in Indiana. Thousands upon thousands of ballots have already been mailed statewide, and now one Indiana group will try to convince a federal appeals court Tuesday to make absentee by mail an option for every Hoosier voter in this election. Brooke Martin is following that this morning.
Let's welcome in Barbara Tully now, the president of Indiana Vote by Mail. Barbara, thanks for being with us. Your group will argue to federal judges that Indiana should expand absentee votes by mail to everyone. A federal judge here in Indianapolis has already rejected that plan. What are your chances of convincing the appeals court here?
We feel like the arguments that we've submitted in our brief are quite strong, and we feel like the state's arguments are quite weak, especially in the context of the fact that the state had interpreted the absentee reasons and expanded them for the primary and then failed to do so for the general election. So they've already granted the right, and it seems a little bit hard to go back on that for the general election, but we are hoping that the appeals court is interested in moving in our direction, but we're just going to have to wait till oral arguments, and then we have no idea after that when the panel would come down with a decision.
Okay, we want to talk about a judge and that they said vote by mail may be a wise choice, but one Indiana leaders have not made. We made that report on Wish TV weeks ago. So can you convince state leaders to make the change here?
You know, it's a slow and long journey. As we say in our group, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we understand that, and changing hearts and minds in the legislature is just going to have to happen over time. Anyone that's listening to this ought to talk to friends and family members that are in Colorado or Oregon or Washington, Utah, Hawaii. California is doing it for the entire state this year, New Hampshire. But talk to the states that have been doing it for the longest time, Oregon, Colorado, and Washington State, and talk to people you know in those states and find out how they like it. I think voters there would be loath to give it up.
How do you counter the argument that people say if people can stand in line at Walmart, the movie theater, they can stand in line in person to vote?
You know, a trip to the store, I would say, is a fairly quick in and out, and people are masked. You know, if people show up at polling places on election day, what kind of enforcement measures are going to be on those volunteers who are working at polling places to enforce social distancing or mask wearing? And so for people who are afraid of COVID-19 or in a risky population, they should have the option, which means anyone should have the option to vote by mail if you choose to do it. It's just an option. No one's twisting anyone's arm saying that they have to vote by mail.
Barbara Tully, president of Indiana Vote by Mail. Thanks for your time, Barbara.
Thank you so much.
And Republicans nationwide, including President Trump, have argued that expanded mail-in balloting could lead to election fraud. Oral arguments in this case will be on Tuesday. It's unclear if the court could issue a ruling before Election Day. We'll keep you posted. Coming up, the candidates for president together on the same stage. Just how high are the stakes for the debates, or will they have any impact at all? Our insiders talk about that next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics on this Sunday morning. It's time to welcome in our political insiders and break down some of the key issues of the week. Democrat Laura Beck is the owner of Beck Communications Group, who also worked for First Lady Maggie Kernan and Indianapolis Mayor Bart Peterson. And Republican Pete Seat is the former communications director for the Indiana Republican Party and who worked in the White House press office for President George W. Bush. Good to see you both. Thank you for being here. We've heard from Democratic gubernatorial candidate Dr. Woody Myers just a little while ago, and he says he would consider another state shutdown order due to the coronavirus. Does he have a realistic chance to win this election, and will that play a role come November? Laura, we'll start with you, being the Democrat on the panel.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's so good to be with you all, and it's good to be here for the first show. I think we really are looking at coronavirus as such a moving target. And when you look at the numbers, I know we moved to stage 5 this past week, but when you look at the numbers, Indiana is still coming in at 800, 900, 1,000 cases. So it really remains to be seen as we get closer to the election, if we're going to see those numbers continue to go up. And if those numbers continue to go up, national polls are showing across the board that people are not unhappy with the response to coronavirus. And because they're unhappy with the response to coronavirus, that's their reality right now. I mean, that's why we're sitting here like this right now. So it's very possible when people go to the polls, they may vote on coronavirus. And if we've had a spike, that may be a factor in the vote.
Your thoughts, Pete?
Well, I'll answer this more succinctly and directly. No, Woody Myers does not have a chance of winning this election in November. His plan, as I understand it, is to activate the mask police, is to shut down our businesses, is to close our schools. Governor Holcomb's plan, on the other hand, is to thoughtfully, methodically, and responsibly look at the data and make decisions that are in the best interests of the health of our economy and the public health of Hoosiers. And that's why Governor Holcomb is going to be re-elected, because he has handled this pandemic responsibly in the state of Indiana. And what Woody Myers is proposing is the irresponsible path forward.
All right, we'll take a turn now to the Supreme Court. Both Indiana senators, I know you guys both have a lot to say. We're just running out of time here. I want to get a lot in.
Okay.
Both Indiana senators say they support President Trump's push to vote on a replacement for Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg before Election Day. Democrats are calling it hypocrisy after Republicans, of course, refused to give Merrick Garland that vote in 2016. What will be the impact come November? And if Democrats win, Pete, the Senate and White House, do you believe they'll move to expand the court? Should they even? We'll start with you.
Absolutely not. They should not move to expand the court, and that's something that Joe Biden is going to have to answer for in the coming weeks. But let's remember, this is a two-step process to filling a Supreme Court seat. The president has the prerogative, the president in office when the vacancy happens, the prerogative to make the nomination, and the Senate has the prerogative for advice and consent, which means accept or reject. And when it came to Merrick Garland, Obama made the nomination. The Senate chose to reject it. In this case, with the Republican Senate and a Republican president, you're going to see the nomination and the acceptance by a Republican Senate, hopefully before the election.
Well, that's one of the best cases of revisionist history I've ever heard, but I won't go that far down the road today. Look, the Republicans are playing games. They know that the country is moving in a more progressive direction. They don't like it, and so they've got to jam this through. What is ultimately going to happen is, I think it's going to backfire on them. It's going to galvanize voters, and we're seeing across the board, again, in national polling, that voters want the president to wait. They want the Senate to wait. They want to let the next president make that decision. What it's doing here, though, is it's giving Democrats an excellent opportunity for us to talk about an issue that we get people in office. Look back at 2018. This is a direct line for us to talk about health care, because the ACA lawsuit that Curtis Hill and others are putting forward will be heard soon. And so this is a chance for people to understand that they could see all these protections that they have in the middle of a pandemic be gutted. And when we talk about healthcare, I think that puts us on a winning side. And I think you're going to hear us talking about healthcare a lot in these next 5 to 6 weeks.
All right, let me jump in here quick because we have about a minute left. First presidential debate on Tuesday night, live right here on Wish TV. Laura, a win for Joe Biden would be what?
I think Joe Biden's going to come across as fact-based, as measured, as calm. And I think it's going to speak volumes as opposed to Donald Trump.
Pete, a win for Trump.
I think it's taking some of the shine off Joe Biden in these battleground states and aggressively taking the case to the American people about why Joe Biden's record should not be in the White House.
Real quick question, is this going to change anybody's mind on Tuesday?
Most people stays up to watch it.
Yeah, most people have their jerseys on, but you never know. There's mid-season trades all the time.
Laura Beck, Pete Seat, good to see you both. Thank you for joining us. And remember, you can see Tuesday night's debate live at 9 o'clock right here on Wish TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Before you go, just a reminder, you have just a few days left to make sure that you're registered to vote. The deadline to register is October 5th. You can do it in person or online. Some counties also offer a register by phone option. You must have a valid driver's license or a state-issued ID card. We have a link to register and one to let you check if your registration is still valid on our website, wishtv.com. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can always listen to us anytime by downloading the All Indiana Politics podcast. Have a good weekend.